Bill. It's Dave. We're talking 2020 NFL draft prospects. A little max headroom. We're in the SEC, ladies and gents. We did quarterbacks. We did running backs. Today we are going to begin the wide receivers. And being that in today's offenses from college and the NFL, we're going to lump the tight ends into that group as well.
Pass catchers.
All right, buddy. Why don't you start us off here?
All right. So
where are we going first? SEC wide receiver. Who do you think the top guy for this is on the board in this area in this conference?
Well, I definitely think it's one guy. Really, when you hear about the receiving, there's probably a total of 3 guys that are looked at as potential first rounders, and that's not to say we couldn't have more. But in the SEC, I think the name you're going to hear first and foremost is going to be Jeudy, kid from Florida that went to Alabama.
It's Jerry.
He put up some ridiculous stats.
6'1", $193.
Yep. I think the consensus is that he is going to be one of the top 2 receivers. It's really between him and CeeDee Lamb. Most accounts, most people mock him first of all the receivers. Here's what to like. The guy is an absolute burner. He's got very good hands. He's got what many talk about, and you can say you've seen it if you've watched the tape, is an advanced ability to run routes. You know, particularly when you get that fast, a lot of times laziness can set in route running because you're so much more athletic than the guy across from you. He was very, very crisp. And as we mentioned, we talked a little bit about Tua, and one of his things that I saw was, he didn't have to throw a lot of guys open between him and another guy we're going to talk about, Henry Ruggs, and those weren't the only 2, but those are the 2 we're talking about in the draft.
Yep.
These guys created separation very quickly. So, Jerry Jeudy, I think, has all the earmarks of being a first-rounder, and I think it's going to be the number 1 guy in the draft. As far as the receiver position goes, I think he will beat out CeeDee Lamb. I would have questioned it a little bit if the Nuke Hopkins trade hadn't played out, thinking that CeeDee Lamb might be a good fit for Kyler Murray, and maybe he could beat him there. But I think I see this. I read something a couple days ago, I think it was a day ago, about Jerry Jeudy, and I forget where it came from. It's probably like 247 or something like that, where they were scouting him, and they said the one flaw to his game, which I don't think would really shock anybody, and it really wasn't to his game, it just is a receiving flaw, is his size and whether he can handle physicality. 6'1", 193 is...
He'll have to throw on, 10 pounds or so.
Well, the question is, can he do that and maintain that weight or maintain that speed? Excuse me. But because again, it's going to be a physical position. He's not going to be your contested catcher. Likely, just hasn't fit that profile. I'm not saying that he can't. But I said it to you talking about it, and God, man, being a Bears fan, we have been masters at drafting guys in the top 10 that never do anything at wide receiver. Looking at you, Kevin White, most recent. But this is a guy clearly he shows talent. I mean, you can't deny that. But in the physicality of it, that could be a concern down the line.
Well, 9.5-inch hands, so he's got decent hands. This is a guy that he's a junior. So the year before last, his sophomore year, he was a guy that took the top off defenses for the most part, a linear runner. They transitioned him this past year to do more of those contested catches, intermediate routes, not just the downfield. And he did a good job in the fact that he's got great awareness for spacing, with whether it be a corner or safety on him, and knowing where to break his route the right way so that he's got no one taking his lunch. It's all him. He's got great hands. There's been, I've read a few things in terms of weaknesses, that he's more of a straight line runner. Again, I didn't
see that this year.
I think the transition this year showed different. I mean, they said a lot of that. They said a lot of those same things about a guy in this past year's draft, wide receiver from the SEC, Mr. DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
And he was still doing a lot of downfield and taking tops off defenses, but he was working a lot with one of the best in Russell Wilson, who said that's not the case at all. He's not just this linear runner. He's a good player.
In fact, I'd almost say I saw the exact opposite out of him.
Yep.
Now, though, in fairness, the difference between him and DK Metcalf in build is very noticeable. So I can see the clean route running. The NFL,
his vision as a receiver when he gets the ball in his hands on those short to intermediate routes is exceptional.
Yeah.
And you talk about CeeDee Lamb, and that's the one thing. The two of them are, I would almost say, identical. You see those plays where they're catching ball, over crosses across the middle and intermediate route, and they have the whole defense chasing them. Yeah. And they're just able to find the space, make a cut, go through the hole, cut back. I mean, and the defenses are just turning this way, turning that way, and they're gone.
Yeah, I think that listen, this is just what teams are going to do to him. I mean, in the NFL, there is a lot more bump and run, jam coverage, or jam off the line.
And I don't feel like he saw as much.
No, I think the biggest problem was because if he beat you off the line, you're were
screwed.
In deep trouble. Yeah. But in the NFL, it's a very different animal, and it is that impact. And again, I think we're picking on a guy who I'm talking about the guy who I think is going to go number one at the receiver position.
He could definitely be a starter day one.
Yeah,
I think you have to evolve, if not right out the gate, into if it's a team that's doesn't have a wide receiver one. This is a guy that could be that.
Yeah, and where he may really end up fitting in is more of a slot type receiver or a secondary. He might be that straight line receiver if you've got someone out there like Allen Robinson, who's not particularly fast, but is big-bodied and gets it. You talked about T. Higgins from Clemson.
Right.
If he's matched with that, I think where he goes, but I think the challenge will be is if he goes to a team where he doesn't have that other physical option and he has to play like that's just the guy I'm going to, that might be where some of that gets exposed. But at the same time, this is a guy who gets away. If he gets away from you, you are in deep doo-doo.
I think he'd be a great fit on a team where they need like somebody on the boundaries with his skills, and they have like a really good slot, like the Colts. With a T.Y. Hilton dropped right down their slot in the slot, like that's, and then because he's a really good, you can't take your eyes off of T.Y. Even though he's a slot guy, a lot of times he sees multiple coverages.
Yeah, I think the challenge will be though is you take a guy in the first 15 picks as a slot. That's what I'm saying. Going to team with a good slot receiver like a T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah. That way, that he can play his role on the outside, but you don't have some shabby slot guy or only average slot guy. Like you got to worry about T.Y. Hilton. So it could lessen the amount of loading coverage on a guy like this on the outside.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be the talent's there, the speed's there. The game knowledge is there.
The competition is there. He's played against the best.
Yeah. And I mean,
with the best.
It was very interesting this year. One thing is you would say in Alabama, when I looked at the years with like a Julio Jones out there or even a Ridley, they were the guy.
Yeah.
They were the guy. And they were the guy in an offense where if we're going to throw it, it's coming to you. And there is going to be, teams were going to blanket you. This year, they had a track team going out there. I mean, it was like every week you found out about another guy that you felt like he was running like a 3.9. He was running so fast.
Yep.
And so, that's it didn't really give him an opportunity to be only the guy where everybody was watching him to where you could definitively say. It doesn't mean he wasn't good enough, doesn't mean you didn't like what you saw, just where you could definitively say, okay, this guy is a number one. Because when you're drafting, if he goes as early as some people are talking,
when Julio was there, you knew he was the guy.
Yeah,
they have got lots of guys there.
But even when he was the guy and being covered like the guy,
he still got
the ball. Yeah,
right. And so that's the big question. I don't know if that you're posing. I don't know if that is the case even, but it's a good note. Now let's move on to his counterpart since we're talking Alabama, and that's Mr. Henry Ruggs III. He is a junior as well, 5'11", So just a little shorter and lighter, 188 pounds, but 10 and an eighth inch hands, so bigger hands, and absolutely annihilated the combine with a 4.2740.
Stupid fast.
Yeah, I mean,
Video game fast.
Video game fast.
Yeah, this guy, here's the thing. I saw, like, there's so many mocks out there, and, you know, mock drafts are fun, but they're dumb in evaluating, I guess I would say. Because really the problem is once a team doesn't do in the top 5 or 6 picks what you think they're going to do, it redoes everything. But that being said, one of the ones I saw him getting mocked to, which would absolutely frighten me, is going to Tampa.
Oh, wow.
Could you imagine that guy is the third fiddle with Godwin and Evans? I mean, this is the kind of guy, like, if you think about Tom Brady and what he had guys, 2 guys for large stints of his career in Welker and in Edelman. And now you think about, like, never had the speed that this guy had, like, and those two, and we talked about the big receiver, you got Godwin who can do it all. I mean, that would be crazy. That would be crazy. They'd have a lot invested in their receiving core at that point, which I don't know how much that makes sense. I still think that's a team that needs help defensively. But just to give you an idea, I mean, this guy he's a burner, and he's got good hands. He's not the refined route runner, that you're going to see out of Jerry Jeudy. But you put the ball in his hands, and he is tough. So I just think that could be very interesting to see where he goes. I would see him potentially going somewhere in the back half of the first round, anywhere from probably like 13 on, and be gone.
Yeah, you know how I feel about the combine. I think it's great, but I think you got to weigh these guys' career much more than the combine. I mean, you know, a guy like this has had a great career, so his combine numbers only boosted it. I don't know if he's better than Jeudy. I mean, certainly we saw this year, like you said, it was, you know, who's it going to be this week?
Yeah.
So, and is that a product of the offense as a whole, or because everybody was getting theirs?
Yeah.
You know, he is more like a Tyreek Hill type, I think, than, you know, a big body guy. This is the small, quick guy. This is the guy that the lightning speed, the game breaking type player. That's what he is. And I'm not saying, you know, he can, you know, certainly do the short to intermediate routes that you don't see Tyreek do a lot. That might be the big difference. Tyreek's mostly like get it downfield or get it in the backfield and go.
Yep.
But, you know, I don't know. I just feel like, you know, because of the combine, now people are talking, well, maybe he might go before CD Lamb or Jerry Jeudy.
I've seen that on a few.
And I don't know if that is the wise choice. It would be, but like you said, imagine him on a team like Tampa Bay now, where they've got pieces all over the place,
Yep.
and then hell yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, you know what's kind of interesting to me is if you look at it from like the stats and the film and that kind of thing, a lot of the smaller receivers kind of have a little bit more to them, but in the NFL, bodies are getting bigger. Like in the pass catching game, like when you think about it, okay, when AJ Green and Julio Jones came out, those were incredibly athletic. They were fast. They weren't Henry Ruggs fast, but they were fast. They were definitely true number ones. And you kind of look through some of the years that we've had and some of these guys that have come out. And the interesting part is this is probably the first time where I've seen the talk of the talent being the smaller guys, but that is also why I'm seeing, it's very strange, where I've seen all over the place anything from people talking about the Ruggs, Jeudy falling back and Ruggs falling into the second round, and guys starting to look and going like, man, do I really want more of a Justin Jefferson, who we got to talk about here, or do I want, Chenault or something like that, somebody that's a big boy, T. Higgins, like it's going to be interesting to see. And I think it goes back to what you talked about in the ACC one is, you know, if you need X guy, but to me, there is no elite with very few holes, because I'm concerned about the fact that the top 3 guys that people have talked about on boards for the last, month or year and a half or year have been little guys. I said that to you before. Like, there's no 6'4" guy at the top of the board.
Well, here's a little piece I just want to throw in there. Who do you think the best defense Alabama faced this year was?
You mean as far as game stats or just overall the best defense? Probably have to be Alabama or Auburn. I mean
Auburn. Okay,
I'm trying to think.
that might be right. That might be true. LSU's, I would say, probably pretty close.
It's decent, yeah.
Especially if you're talking about corners.
Yeah.
Corners.
Yeah, Alabama's got corners.
Because we're talking receivers, so we're talking corners. So in the game that Alabama played LSU, the guy not on here, because he's not eligible, Devonta Smith, went 7 receptions, 213 yards for 2 TDs. Jeudy did have 5 for 71 in a TD. Ruggs had 3 for 68. But I remember watching that game, and that was in terms of offense for Alabama. Who was the offense that game?
Well, I mean, in the second half, it definitely was Harris, Najee Harris. I mean, when they actually started like looking like they had a chance,
I would agree with you. So my point is this: against one of the better teams, and eventually the national champion, against really good caliber and guys that are some of them in the draft corners in secondary. These guys. I mean, 5 for 71 and TD is great in a game, but we're used to these guys doing what Devonta Smith did. Now, Smith was probably not seeing, the head guy, Delpit and the freshman kid on the other side. He was probably dropped in.
Was that Blaylock? Isn't that his name?
I can't remember the kid's name. It'll come.
I know
me.
It's there because they always compare him to like Jalen Ramsey.
But the point is this: if you watch the game as a whole, it was Najee Harris that was creating for them, especially in their times of need.
Stingley.
And not these guys, much like my receivers at Clemson didn't do much in the postseason. Like in a big game like this, these guys weren't as impactful, I guess. Now, again, they did their job and somebody else got it done, but in a game, especially a game they lost. Okay, and this is the big game, and it was big this year.
Yep.
That they needed them to step up, and it wasn't that. So that's I don't know. Maybe I'm looking into it too far, but maybe that's what needs to be done.
Well, because here's part of the challenge, and this is a reality of all the NFL teams right now is. So your sample size starts to get changed. You don't get to go work these guys out, and so now you're looking at game tape and. You can look at it 2 different ways. You can go, well, that's one of the best they faced, and maybe they didn't rise to the occasion the way we would have wanted them to. Mm-hmm. Or you can also look at it and go, it's one game, and I'm doing that.
If you watch that game, I do remember specifically Ruggs struggling with some of the press coverage that was on him in that game.
No, we watched it together.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm just saying, is it a bad game for that person where they struggled or, and again, I guess to be fair, those aren't horrid games. It's not like they disappeared. They just weren't as impactful.
But when you get to the NFL, it's all another level. So
Sure. Yeah.
So let's move on, and then we'll stop and talk about more of the ancillary receivers. But really, in the SEC, Jeudy and Ruggs are the top 2 guys in this draft. The next guy I do want to rope into this before we talk about the ancillaries is probably the 3rd guy in the mix, and depending on the need, could go ahead, and that's LSU's Justin Jefferson. Give you his statisticals really quick. 6'1", 202 pounds, 9 1/8 inch hands. So a little smaller hands, but taller, bigger bodied. Ran a 4.43 at the combine in the 40. Saw him have a great year. Certainly, he was the beneficiary of a lot of Joe Burrow's successes, as well as Jamar Chase. And look, here we go again. He didn't do it. I think in the semi game against Oklahoma, he was all over the map. And then in the finals against us, it was
I think
Jamar
the LSU Tigers scored a touchdown in that game.
Yeah, this is true.
It was
didn't he have,
unbelievable.
4 touchdowns in the first half. But he was all over the place. But my point is then when we played him, it was Chase, and he did a few things, but we were able to keep Jefferson in check a bit.
Now, one thing about Jefferson that I have seen, and I focused on this, and again, I go back to, we talked a little bit about, Burrow was, thank God for that Texas game that woke us up a little sooner to this LSU team that we couldn't have.
Yep.
One of the things I saw in that game with Justin Jefferson, and I talked about hitting the windows with Burrow, hitting small windows, was Jefferson catching a lot of balls in traffic.
True.
Now, he's a little bit thicker. He's a wider body. Got 10 more pounds on Jeudy. A 4.4 is nothing to, what was it, 4.43? That's nothing to sneeze at. This is a guy that, in my mind, you're gonna have some chunks together. Like if him and T. Higgins a little bit a bigger body, not a little bit. He's what, 6'4", 6'5", 6'4", I think. 6'5". Okay, so he's a big boy, but Jefferson plays a lot like that. He plays far more like that than he does like CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy, and certainly Henry Ruggs. I think this is a guy that has, that's what was so amazing to me is when you really want to look at this offense, like when I watched Alabama's offense and I saw those receivers, you would almost watch their games and be like, is somebody going to cover these guys? Like, I found myself saying that over and over again. Now, that being said, they played against some competition that had a lot of separation. There was a lot of games with LSU where I was like, man, those guys can get the ball. Like, they were going and getting it.
Of these three guys, longest of arms of all of them, 33-inch arms. And that's important. You talk about in that traffic in those windows, he gives
catch radius.
He gives that quarterback more of a catch radius. And not only that, one of the great things I think about him is I think he's got strong hands, dude. He may have 9 1/8, the smaller of the three. He goes out, his hands go out and snatch the ball. Grab it. And I think as he just got better, as I think LSU as a whole did as the year went on.
Yeah.
And so that's a positive thing that he's able to progress throughout the year. I look at him and when he's running his routes, I don't think he's the crispest route runner, but I think he has a good feel for the coverage to find the open space, and that's okay with me. You don't have to be a perfect route runner if you've got a great feel for the guy on you and getting open. You have that symbiotic relationship with your quarterback. He knows the kind of player you are. I think he was off the snap. He's a big body guy, but he usually gets off pretty well, and I think he's surprisingly, for being the biggest of these three, is very elusive as a receiver. I think he can, if it's a deep ball, he's talked about the in-traffic ball. Let's also talk about deep routes. He ran those too, and I feel like this is a guy that can adjust very well to a deep ball, a center fielder type that knows that if he has to move towards the ball, he's really good at keeping his eyes on the ball and adjusting to it, as he and still maintaining his speed. But again, I mean, one of the big things was what I said. He's got long arms, ladies and gents. He's going to give that quarterback, no matter who it is, a little bigger of a window than he might.
And one other thing I really noticed about him, which generally goes with guys that can make tough contested catches, is I don't know that I could really have a lot of examples of Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy needing with body control.
Yeah.
They may not have been in that scenario enough at their speed, but Justin Jefferson has incredible body control, knowing how to leap at the right moment, high point balls. It goes back to your reach. I just saw a lot of that this year, and you would think with an offense that prolific, they were probably running free, like a lot of big-time college offenses have done historically. But there was a lot of games where they just made tough catches, and we're going to talk a little bit later about their tight end, and he's a guy that kind of did the same thing. It was a little bit of LSU's MO, and which in turn makes me so impressed by Joe Burrow is it takes two to tango, and they small windows, and they caught him. It was amazing.
Yeah,
meaning they earned it.
Yeah, they did. And I was there and I watched it and it was impressive. And I got to be honest. And though in that game Jefferson didn't do as much, he was involved, and Moss didn't do as much. He caught a touchdown, but it was a blown coverage. But he was involved, and it was the Jamar Chase show. But just that Burrow was able to feed all these monsters throughout the year, and they were and play even Edwards-Helaire, and that they just got better and better and better. And even if they weren't the premier star, like I said, that was Chase during the national championship. there were a few plays. I mean, I have to look up his stat line, but I remember looking at it like Jefferson was involved. He didn't kill us. We kept him in check, especially coming off the game prior. But he didn't disappear. He was definitely involved. And that's this team. They just continued to grow.
Yeah, and there'll be a little bit of a fear of, like, who made who, like I talked about with Alabama.
Who made who?
I knew I'd get that.
Who made you?
My mommy. So anyway, but the point is, like, and to say something about this, Clemson was, I'm sorry, it was by far, and I know Auburn's defense was good, and Auburn played them tough. Clemson was the best defense that they played all year. Mm-hmm. That was the best defense. And they didn't make you guys look bad, but they certainly showed that they were every bit as good of an offense, but better, probably a little bit better than your defense on that side of the ball. And again, that's why they won.
Yep.
But it was a game. Like, that wasn't – this was no joke. And,
they
Clemson,
were shocked at the beginning when we were shutting them down that was happening. Because I'll tell you, I know they were, because you could see them, but their fans were. They're like, oh, my God, what's happening? You know, they were so confident, and they have every right to be, but it was shocking, I think, to some of them that was happening. Now, they certainly made their adjustments, but anyways, good team. These three receivers are definitely the top in the SEC. I am excited. I anticipate seeing them, if not day one, very early in the regular season, being involved in whatever team that drafts them. So I think they'll all go, well, definitely two of them in the first round, and I think Jefferson has a shot, too, to slip in there. We'll see. Again, it depends on team needs. We'll go from here and jet this one out, and then we're going to jump on another one because there's plenty of other wide receivers, a few tight ends we want to talk about next time on
The Gridiron.